Hey everybody, how's it going? I joined the Score Space Jam number 11, and my girlfriend helped me out with the art, and we had a great time. The premise of the jam, you get 3 days. The rules were tied to teleportation. I believe it has to have a score system, and upgrades. So, tried to knock all that out as quick as we could. This is what we came up with. Okay, not exactly. Actually, this is what we came up with. Alright, so let's break this project down real quick. Essentially, the way it works, you fire projectiles using the right mouse button, teleport using the left mouse button, you aim where you teleport, and aim your guns with the mouse. I've got 3 different enemy ship types. One of those ship types fires a drone that flies in and then fires back at you. We also, as far as the upgrading system, have a fire rate increase as well as a bullet spread. So, let's break down how this project came together a little bit and see what we have. Alright, everything's basic. We're going to start with the camera. The camera is an orthographic view. We have it set up specifically so that it frames our scene. Right now, I've got it in a nice tight size 2, but as you see here, if I hit Control 6, we have an animation that scales that up to a 5. I'm sorry, a 7. Anyway, that animation is active whenever we press our start button down here, and I'll show you how to do that. If you look in our animation system here, we have our zoom out animation that it goes to, and that transfers into an is zoomed out state. And then we also have a shake, which essentially just adjusts that camera size by 2 points in either position. Gives that nice wobble effect for explosions or impacts. So that animation is going to be initiated by a button press on the start, but we'll go over that here in just a sec. Alright, one more thing to look at here is our background. I have this set up as a specific object. That's why it's named pick. So it's just a square, nothing special about it, but I have a finite state machine attached to it, and this is actually what's spawning our enemy ships and their positions. See the setup I have, you can see where it's initiating each object and it's registering their positions and where they should be. And then I have a random weight set up between each one so that there's some variation in when they're spawning. Alright, that's pretty much that. These are the enemy ships, so each one has some variations on its behavior. But without any art, they are just simple squares that have a simple function, and that is to move towards, and right now we have that set to a variable called mouse, and I'll show you where we get that from, but that is their only behavior for now. We have an attachment to those. Now, these guys essentially are the gun system, and they are targeting the player lock using a look at function. We then have a random wait between that to pause so they're not firing all the time. Then we have a health system. This essentially, you see this collider tag. Whenever they are hit with player shot, that health system triggers one more forward. Once it gets to the end, they're destroyed. Alright, pretty simple stuff so far. What else do we have? Alright, next thing we'll take a look at is player shot. This is a very simple object. The important thing is the tag on it. I've added player shot. As far as the finite state machine, we just have it constantly moving in one direction, and then we'll have a targeting system that determines that direction down the line. And we have a nice little particle system attached to it. Alright, let's take a look at the most complex thing, our actual player. Okay, this right here is a simple finite state machine. All it's doing, it looks a little complex, but all it's doing is defining a screen wrap. So if our player, you see here, get position of owner, and then it's got our X position and Y position. And that's going to store into a variable for us. We're then able to take that variable and use it in a float compare. So X position versus 9, which is roundabout where the screen cuts off. You can do some testing there for yourself on things like that. But then we just greater than that position, say right. At the point that right is initiated, we then just set position of our owner object to -9. And we create a nice little effect there with the ring effect. Let's look at our next one here. This is how we're teleporting. So this is a mouse pick 2D, and all this is going to do is whenever we click our mouse, it's going to store our mouse position, and you see it stores in this variable that we've named mouse, which you saw that we used earlier in our camera for the, in our ship for the targeting systems. So we're then taking that variable and we're breaking down its coordinates, and we're able to use that to essentially translate that over to where the player should be. So we're saying, figure out where the mouse is, put the player there. Alright, this next one's nice and simple. Collision event 2D, bad. At that point, we're going to have our scoreboard object pop up and destroy our player object. All pretty self-explanatory. And this is how we were getting that player location data. So we have another finite state machine that specifically just gets the player location, and you can look that over. Alright, on our scoreboard object, we'll take a quick look at that, but it's pretty basic setup. It has a couple variables, and you'll see how we're storing those variables here in just a little bit, but it's just got the 2 button option. So if you look through, it scales time down so that stuff's not going on in the background, and then we have our quit button and our retry button. And whenever you look those over and select them, it just shoots you over to either choice. One quits the application, the other one restarts the application. Alright. This object is actually our starter here, so it's scaling time down and making sure that our camera is in its appropriate animated state. And then it's spawning our cool little ring effect in the background every 0.5 seconds with that scaled down time. We're also keeping an eye out with another finite state machine for us to select the start game. So this square here, right behind start game. And that sends a finished event over. And you see we have our animator play on camera zoom out there. It's also going to destroy itself and rescale time to 1 where it should be. Alright, this here's our score. So you see all this is a text object that essentially says set value SC. So that text is always going to display whatever the variable SC is. So we're going to need to define what that variable is. We're doing that with these green zones. Essentially, this has a finite state machine attached to it. And all that does is look out for a trigger on the player and then adds 10 to the variable SC. This immediately gives us a scoring system. Okay, here we go. This is our upgrade system. This is done with a simple float compare. So we have essentially an upgrade every 200, and how we're upgrading in this particular case is two different methods, but in this one we're upgrading our fire rate. So all I've done is stored a variable, labeled it fire rate, and every time our score goes up to a certain point using a float compare, we then raise that variable, and then that's plugged back into the player. So you can see before it was 200, now it's 400. We increase our variable fire rate to 0.5. And then we also have a spread. That does a little bit of a different thing. It essentially instantiates two more projectiles that are slightly off angle to provide a shotgun-like blast. That's using a separate finite state machine that is a duplicate of the first, but with those other objects added in. I essentially just shut one down, open the other one up simultaneously. I think that actually covers most of the programming work. We have that nice effect in the background. That's again using the animation system. It's Control 6. I've done a couple tutorials in the past that had covered that. The most recent one would be the day-night cycle tutorial, but using the Unity built-in animation system is very easy to do. And it's a whole lot of fun. So, what's a game without art? Let's look at the art. This is an awesome ship that my lovely lady drew. She also sent me a crystal and a couple ship variants, and this is the Fantastic player character. What else do we have? A background here. And an asteroid. Everything you need for a nice space game. So at this point, with most of the programming done, it's as simple as placing in your aesthetic objects where they go and parenting them appropriately. So I toss that background image right in the background, and then just disabled the sprite renderer for our previous background. I tossed the player character sprite, just parented it right to the player, and then just disabled the sprite renderer for the original circle placeholder. Looks like we got built-in objects after that. So for the asteroid, same deal. Now with these, the crystal clusters, I actually drag those in as individual objects, but it's the same basic principle. Instead of dragging in one instance, I dragged in each one, because I like to complicate things. But you can see how that's done. I literally just dragged it from the assets right in there. And delete that. So we're literally just going in and taking our art assets and pasting them right over top of our placeholder assets, which is going to make a world of difference. I forgot to mention for the ring expand, she also drew that awesome ring as well. Forgot to pull that up. Alright, so we've got pretty much all the art in there. And you see how much of a difference that, how quickly we went from throwing a prototype together to having something much more pleasing. And I know I didn't go through it step by step like I normally do. This would have been like 6 videos if I would have done that. I figure hopefully this gets the point across. Obviously, if you have any questions, throw them my way. Alright, next up, we're going to throw in some particle effects. So this is a really basic particle effect. You see I've just got the emission putting out 10 every 10 seconds. Have a very simple texture assigned to it. I believe you can get that in the standard assets package. Very basic particle system. A little bit does go a long way with this type of stuff, though. For the explode, I went a little bit more exotic. So this is the same sort of thing, except for we have a much faster start speed, as well as a burst on our emission instead of a rate over time. This shoots all the particles out at once, and you're able to assign a variable to that, which is pretty cool. We also have noise to provide that variation as the particles are moving, and collision for fun. And the trails, you can mess around with those, but you can get some really cool effects with those. I've got an audio source attached to it as well, which I just turned on. It's just a nice little explosion sound. And we've got an audio source attached to our player shot, and I've just got it set to play on awake, nothing special there. You see, really, it has nothing going on in the finite state machine. It's literally a circle with a particle collider, a sound, and we tell it to move. So all pretty basic. And then as far as the camera, last but not least, I threw a bunch of post-processing effects because I love doing that stuff. You can take a peek through the settings here and probably don't set yours that way. Maybe tone everything down a little bit. Or tone it up if that's what you're enjoying. Toss a nice background song in there. And if you're having any questions about the post-processing, I do have a video covering that as well. And there's everything with sound. And our cool particle effects. And that's pretty much the game. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like, share, and subscribe. Take it easy, and have a good one.